Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. MrAyrit here. Got a review for you today of the Sennheiser HD800S. So if you were in this audiophile game, this headphone hobby for any length of time, then you've certainly heard about the HD800, 800S, and now the 8XX from Drop. I've got the 800S that was loaned to me by a friend of the channel. And you know, of course I was excited to review this headphone because you hear so much about it, and as a gamer in particular, it's one that I've always wanted to try just because, you know, it's touted as one of the best gaming headphones, or the best gaming headphone that you can get. So let's take a look at what you get with this guy, and we'll dig into the build, dig into the sound, all that stuff, and ultimately kind of I'll let you know where I stand on it as far as like what's the value of it, because it is about a $1,500 headphone if you buy it new, although on the used market pretty regularly, you know, closer to, you know, $1,100 to $1,000, something around there. So anyway, let's get into it. Here's the box. It is kind of like a typical Sennheiser box. I mean, it's, you know, if you've had a 6XX or a 660S or anything like that, it's pretty similar. You know, it is really nice, and it's a simple box, but it's a nice presentation to open it up. Got the headphones there. We'll talk about those in a second. I do want to just quickly show you some of the things it comes with. It's got like this package. It's got like a full-on booklet. It hasn't been opened yet by the previous owner, so I'm not going to open it, but it looks like, I don't know, there's a little Sennheiser keychain or something in there. It looks like it's kind of nice. Owner's manual on a USB, and then the cables. So mine came to me with two cables, and the cables I really like. I wish they weren't as long because they're about 10-12 feet long. I don't know, I didn't check it exactly. I think standard is kind of the 1/4 inch here, and of course they've got those rather unique Sennheiser connectors, which, I mean, they work all right, but I wish it was something more standard just so it was easier to swap cables and things like that. But the material is like a thick fabric, and it's actually really, really nice, I think. So I got that one, and then I had a 4.4 here. You can just see it sticking out of this little bag here. So I had a 4.42 with it, but other than that, they were exactly the same cable. So nice cable, but pretty long is what you need to know getting into it. Now, I mean, it is easy to get aftermarket cables for these. It's just you're probably going to have to buy it specifically for this headphone. But, you know, I mean, if you love it and you have it, and then why not invest in whatever cable you want for it, is kind of my stance on it. Let's look at the build here. I mean, we don't need to spend a ton of time on it. Obviously, if you've been in this hobby for any amount of time, then you kind of know what these look like, and that they're built really well. They are, I would say, kind of like shockingly slim and lightweight for what they kind of look like in photos and things like that. So obviously just a super unique design with these guys. I mean, they look like they're from the future, I guess, is what it comes down to, which is, it's kind of like the opposite of a ZMF headphone, I would say, in that they're both very well built, but ZMF is like classic wood, leather, all that, and this is like kind of new age, modern, space age type stuff. Obviously they're huge, they're very comfortable. I mean, they don't have a ton of clamp. I would actually maybe prefer even like a little bit more clamp with these guys. But I mean, I never had any real problems with it, and like you can see the slit, they're pretty low profile headphone for like how big they look. They feel good. The pads are kind of like a suede material that are actually kind of stiff, and they're not real thick. But just, I mean, the way that it's set up, it just kind of works. I don't know. I mean, usually I'm a big cushy pad type of guy, but like these work the way it is. Cups are deep though, and my ears don't come anywhere close to touching the drivers or anything on the inside of there. They got kind of this interesting yoke system where it is kind of like springy to adhere to your head, which is good, and then it's got You know, it's got a good amount of articulation. Like, it doesn't look like that much, but as far as just like getting it positioned on your head, I mean, it's pretty seamless and it works well. And my head is rather small, so if you got a small head, these are okay in that regard, which a lot of headphones aren't. So build-wise, comfort-wise, I think these have a lot going for them, especially if you like this styling. I have mixed feelings about the styling. I mean, I'm kind of more of a classic wood cup type of guy, but I mean, I think what's done here is really well done. I don't know, it's cool. It's nice. Yeah, just a well-engineered headphone, right? Well engineered, it's good, looks cool. What more do you want? All right, sound. Yeah, they're wide, like just like everybody says, you know, really wide headphones and just an incredible amount of clarity in these. And like, it's interesting to have a really wide headphone that's also has a lot of clarity to it, because, you know, a lot of headphones, and I'm thinking that are wide, like I'm thinking like the K7XX, they're wide, but you kind of lose some clarity and the imaging gets a little bit hazy. These are extremely wide, but extremely accurate, extremely well separated, extremely well defined, extremely high resolution. So all of those things kind of bundled into one package is a very engaging sound. And you know, the one thing that you hear about these is you hear about like treble peaks, right? You hear people talk about how there can be some weird treble peaks in them, and maybe they're a little bass light. So as far as, do I think those things are true? I would say yes, but not maybe to the extent that some people make them out to be. I was never really bothered by any of the treble peaks. I mean, there were times where I could notice them in a mix, but it was more like it was far enough away from me and resolved enough that I could deal with it, and I could kind of just like analyze it for what it was, right? And it wasn't like a constant like bothering me type of a treble peak. As far as like being bass light, I agree. It does not have, there is no like visceral bass to this headphone. So the bass is there, but you don't feel it. You hear it and you perceive it to be there, but it's not like a thumping, like physical bass that like the HE6. Although I wouldn't say it's like a super bassy headphone, but the bass in that you can feel. A Focal headphone, the bass in those, like you can feel the bass in those headphones. This is not that type of headphone. That being said, I missed it to a certain extent, but not as much as you would think. I could still very much sit down and like enjoy music with these and understand the bass was there and, you know, get the texture of it and things like that. So, yeah, I don't think it's not a deal breaker, not for me anyway. Although if I was going to just my preferences, yeah, I want to feel a little bit of bass. So lots of detail throughout the range. Mids, I think, are probably, for me, the star of the show here, which maybe that's not a surprise because it's a Sennheiser, but I thought vocals came across fairly natural. Despite, you know, like the wide presentation and things like that. And I thought that I always kind of like my gauge of whether a headphone does things well is if I can close my eyes and imagine, you know, people playing instruments. Can I imagine the singer singing into a microphone? And I can do that really well with this headphone. So I thought it was a really nice, engaging experience, even if it doesn't have, you know, some of that visceral, intimate presentation that some other headphones have. I mean, if I'm just going personal preference-wise, I think I'd take the HE6 over this in most situations. But I found this to be, like, I listened to this a lot off of tube amps, which I did think was maybe an improvement over solid state, just because it does take the edge off like a little bit and just makes it a little more relaxed. And I spend a lot of time listening to this headphone in bed and just kind of, lights off, just laying down. And for that, and, with all the space and imaging and separation, it just made for a really nice listen. And I mostly listen to like acoustic music, so that was, so on this headphone, I think that's really good because you're not really expecting like a lot of physical slam and things like that when I'm listening to kind of like chill acoustic before I go to bed. So sound-wise, like, a lot of people say they don't like this headphone for music. Maybe they just listen to different music than I do, but I enjoyed it for the type of music that I'm into most of the time. So I think acoustic things, jazz, orchestral music, I think this is probably going to be a really nice headphone for you. Now, if you're into more like electronic, pop, newer stuff, maybe it's not going to translate as well. But, for me, I enjoyed it. Would I take it over the Aeolus or my HE6? I don't think so. I mean, there is quite a difference between this and like the Aeolus, as far as like this is wider and more open, and just things are just spaced out a little bit more. But as far as like naturalness and what I perceive as maybe a more accurate presentation of space, I think both the Aeolus and the HE6 maybe do that a little bit better. They're not as wide, but just as far as like creating the soundscape, I think they're maybe a little bit better, at least to my ear. And, interestingly enough, if we start talking about gaming, this is where I was quite surprised, because I mean, of course that's what I wanted to try to do with this headphone, right? I mean, that's what it's known for. It's the gaming headphone, the ultimate gaming headphone, right? And maybe my expectations were too high, but I guess I didn't think it was the greatest thing ever. Specifically, I have a Hi-Fi-Man HE560 on hand, the V4 that Adorama sells for around $200, and I like that headphone for gaming better. I think for me that is like my end game gaming headphone. Now, is the HD800S good? Yeah, it's good for gaming, but again, just for me, I don't know. Maybe it's just the way I hear, but I felt the HE560 was, I could pinpoint things a little bit better with it, and it's got a little bit more bass, which I prefer. So I think, man, I don't know, for me, if you're going for just gaming, should you buy this? I think that's a hard sell. If you're wanting a gaming headphone and like a good, spacious music listening headphone for like acoustic music, then I think this headphone starts to become, a really compelling choice. But like for just gaming, I wouldn't spend more than the $200 for the HE560. And maybe it's a smaller soundstage that for me makes it a little bit easier. Maybe it's just because I'm used to that headphone. I've used it enough now. But yeah, I wasn't blown away by the gaming performance with this headphone like I thought I would be. So, I feel like for some of these reviews I'm going against, kind of like popular consensus, but I mean, I just hope you understand that I'm just wanting to give you an honest opinion of what my experience is with these things, and maybe it goes to show us all that we don't all hear the same way, and it's worth maybe experimenting a little bit with some stuff as opposed to just going with the default. Or maybe you get the default and you're kind of like me and you're like, man, I don't hear what other people are telling me they're hearing. And that's okay, right? Find what works for you. That's what this hobby is about. What do you like? What works for you? What do you enjoy? And so for me, I think the HD800S, I think it's an impressive headphone. I think it does a lot of really cool things. Ultimately, I don't think it's one that's going to make it into my collection, but I'm very happy that I had the chance to experience it, because now I have a frame of reference when I hear so many people talking about this headphone. Yeah, and I think that's going to do it. So, if you found this helpful, if you like hearing alternative opinions, if you want to add some alternative opinions down below and tell me that I'm crazy for the way I hear things and think, you know, please do, right? Engage in conversation, engage in dialogue. The more information and the more shared experiences we can get out there, the more this hobby will invite more people in, and I think the more people will get out of it. So that's what I'm trying to do here. If you're into that, consider subscribing to the channel. I will have lots more headphone content coming in the near future. As always, I appreciate you being with me for these videos, and I will see you in the next one.